Hello, I'm Jason Schnipke. I work for Air Gas Specialty Products. It's a ammonia distribution company based in Delphus, and actually it's 30 locations across the United States. We cater to a lot of different businesses and different industries. The majority of our business is taking care of power plants and the emissions control systems. The products we use actually is injected into the stacks and is helping control the emissions that the power plants put off. And other uses is heat treating, water treatment, pH control, refrigeration systems in food warehouses. In whole, Airgas has 1,100 locations currently, and we were just recently purchased by a French company. It's called Air Liquide, and it grew the company from 17,000 in the United States to internationally now it's 68,000 people. So very large business. So in Delphus we have 10 different drivers, 11 drivers in whole, ranging from the semis with the tanker trailers that you'll see, and one straight truck delivery truck. It's a smaller vehicle with smaller deliveries, with 2 plant operators that are in charge of producing the aqua ammonia and loading the trailers and keeping up with plant maintenance. Myself, as the manager here in the office, taking in orders, dealing with the logistics, the paperwork, dispatching the trucks and drivers on a daily basis, as well as covering any maintenance issues that need covered with our vendors, customer visits, going over any kind of safety concerns they have. There's a lot of pieces to the puzzle for even a small plant like we have here in Delphus. There's a lot of regulatory issues that have to stay in line, a lot of paperwork, a lot of computer work. We deal with OSHA, we deal with the DOT, we deal with the EPA. So there's a lot of safety training that has to go on here to keep the community safe from the products that we handle. When I first got into driving, it was mainly because that was something my dad did. My dad drove truck for a lot of years when I was growing up, and he also did carpentry work. So I went to St. John's for the first 10 years of my schooling, and when it was time for me to make a decision in my junior year, I decided to go to Vantage in Van Wert. I took carpentry. It was a very good choice for me, just for the fact that I got a lot more out of school by going there, more hands-on. When we did carpentry when I was there, the junior year, we built cabinets, homemade cabinets for the houses that the seniors built. So then graduate, go into the senior class, and we took on building I think it was about a 2,500 square foot home from scratch. Really the only few things that we didn't do was framing the roof and roofing it to some of the plumbing. But other than that, we did pretty much the whole house. It was a very good experience. It led me to graduate and have a little bit of an idea that carpentry was something I knew. It was easy to me from being around it, but it wasn't really what I wanted to do. So, the first couple of years I was out of school, I took a couple of jobs. I had a small construction company outside of Delphus, and we took care of doing trenching and digging ground loops. And then I moved into doing basements for a living. And that's really where I first started driving heavy equipment, bulldozers, excavators, skid loaders, and driving dump trucks. And that's where I first started driving commercial vehicles, was doing construction. I ended up running the form truck, which is a straight truck with a tandem axle with all the basement forms loaded on it and a crane. And that's where I got started with the heavy equipment. And for a few years we did that, and everything was fine. And when we started getting into being married and trying to raise a family and try and provide a little more money for the family. And I got into getting my CDL, my Class A, to drive semi. I worked for D&D Ingredients in Delphus and drove truck for them for quite a few years. That was where I really got started in the transportation business. I drove for D&D, I'm going to say, for a 2-year stint. I drove for I&K Distributors when it was in business in Delphus for a couple of years, 2 or 3 years, and then I went back to D&D, which is in the transportation business and the driving business is pretty common for people to move around. I stayed with D&D for quite a while. I think I was there for 10 years on my second stay, and this is when this job opened up. I actually started with Airgas as a driver. The first 9 months to a year, I was actually doing deliveries, and we began building the production side of the plant. Delphus never had aqua ammonia before, and they decided to do a test run and see if they could build business here, and that's what we did. We built a temporary plant, and that's right about the time I started learning a lot more about the business, a lot more about the production of the plant, the operations, just from building it from the ground up with the piping, all the tanks, how you set things, set the plant up to be successful. And we built a business, and it gave us the opportunity to build a permanent system, which we have now. Once we had the aqua ammonia and we added a few more trucks, I think I was the 5th person at the time that we came in, and once I started running the plant, they needed someone here full time because there was so much going on. And they offered me the management position in October of 2012 is when I took over. And I've been managing ever since. So from 5 people in 2010 to this year, now we have 14 employees in Delphus. So it's grown quite a bit. I would say the biggest thing that drew me to this position was knowing the area, helped a bunch. Knowing a lot of the people in town, the different businesses, the different vendors that you're going to need to help support your business. That's helped a bunch. And just the attention to detail. A typical day in my world, in the office, as a manager for the plant, you come in the morning, check your mailbox and see what, if any of the guys, the drivers that come in after hours, had any issues, any maintenance issues that are wrote up on any of the equipment. Personal issues, business issues, the doctor's appointments they need scheduled or off time or vacation time scheduled. Try and get that stuff taken care of in the morning. Then we go to the mailbox for the paperwork that the drivers turn in every day from their deliveries, sort through that, make sure all the numbers line up, the weights. Our business is run on weights, and we have to keep an inventory of everything we have on site as well as on paper, so everything matches up from what we say we've bought from the vendors to what we say we've delivered and what we have on site. We do an inventory of that every night, so that's a big part of the business, especially when you're dealing with thousands and thousands of pounds of a very dangerous product. We want to make sure we're not losing any by a leak anywhere. So then we go into planning the next day. We have a central location in each region that the company's broke up into 5 regions for the United States. We're in the Northeast region, and our regional headquarters is in Pennsylvania. So somebody there is taking in all the calls and all the orders for the week. And Thomas, he's in constant contact with me, and we go through the scheduling and all the different loads that have to go out and the different products. Then I go to work on aligning how those deliveries are going to be made with the trucks and the drivers. We get that taken care of, and then we'll go to preparing the paperwork for the drivers for the next day, load numbers, pickup numbers for the different ammonia suppliers that we have to go to pick up our product. The guys are spread out all over the 3-4 surrounding states for Delphus. Our guys get to Michigan, Indiana, Kentucky, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, a little bit of New York. So they're covering some pretty decent ground. Then we go to the regulatory side, is dealing with paperwork. We have plant inspections that I have to make sure get done, hose inspections. There's inspections done on the cargo tanks on the trailers that we have to keep up with. Every year they get an inspection just to check for leaks and external viewing for cracks, and then they get tore down for 5-year tests, and we have to keep track of all of that. We have a fleet company that does a lot of the processing of the invoices, so we have to work with them quite a bit to keep the vendors paid. And it's also dealing with our local vendors to keep the equipment up to speed and maintained well and safe and compliant with the DOT. So there's a lot goes on with just the truck side, and then I work also with my plant operators to keep the plant moving. When you go into the plant side, you have products coming in to run the plant. We use a lot of water. We have a purification system that needs to be maintained, so we have vendors coming in to do system checks and purification updates on the system so we can continue to provide quality product to our customers. Also maintaining the tanks and the piping, keeping everything painted, looking good, and all the safety checks done monthly, quarterly, and annually on the plant. Or there's a lot of different ways to get into the transportation field if you're going to want to drive a commercial vehicle. It kind of depends on what you really want to get out of it. Like I said, I started with the smaller trucks, the dump trucks, the straight trucks, still heavy equipment. That's a Class B CDL. When you get into your tractor trailer, you're talking Class A. Of course, we deal with hazardous materials, so there's another certification you have to get. There's different ways of going about it. There's a lot of driving schools. Vantage has a driving school, Apollo, and there's hundreds of other CDL driving schools. I kind of learned on the fly just because I was around the trucks my whole life, and there's a lot of people that don't really have that opportunity, and nowadays it's not as easy because of the regulations for the insurance. You don't really aren't allowed to have passengers and kids in the trucks. You can go about it many different ways. You can start out small and kind of learn your way on your own, or you can go to one of the schools. It doesn't really matter either way as long as you're getting the education. The driving truck is a hard job. I know people, if you're not in the business, you don't really know what all goes on. The guys put in a lot of hours. It's a very thankless job that they have to do. I have a great appreciation for my guys because I've done it and been there. It's a good career. I go back to it tomorrow if I have to. It's never really been an issue for me. You got to have a good, safe driving record going into it. And if you don't have a good driving record when you're younger, the company's, our company looks back 10 years on a background check for an application. So if you don't have a good driving record when you're young and you go to try and get into this business, your opportunities are going to be different than if you have a clean record. Some of the bigger companies can allow people with worse records in, but that's not exactly the route I would want anybody to go. The biggest thing with the trucking divisions that we have is safety. We do everything by the law. Our trucks have electronic logs in them. The guys have computers they have to monitor for their hours of service. In our business, our guys, if they come up at the end of their day and they're not home, they have to go to the hotel. They have to shut it down. They have a 10-hour break they have to take every day. They get a 14-hour work day, 10-hour break. So 14 hours is a long day. They're driving 11 hours a day. So it can be a long day. When you get to the end of the week, you can max out at 70 hours. And if you think about 70 hours for a week, that's a lot of hours. The hazardous materials business has been the best as far as pay, but it also has the most hazards. The stuff we haul is very dangerous. It can kill you if not handled properly. we don't take that lightly, and nobody that's driving should. So the technology differences from even when I started in the transportation field was, it's been pretty big. When I first started driving, I was using what they call a paper log. You just had a logbook with carbon copies, and you kept track of your day that way. Now, like I say, we have electronic logs. Everything's on a computer. I can monitor all of my drivers, their hours of service, where they're at from my computer on the GPS, what their truck's doing. I can monitor their idle time, how fast they're going, what direction they're going. They've actually started talking about, and some companies have, onboard cameras to monitor the road and the driver. We have companies out there that monitor the driver at all times. The camera is not always on, but if the cab has a certain movement or a hard brake is what they would call it, the camera will turn on to make sure the driver is alert and there's nothing going on that the company needs to be aware of. The onboard computers make a big difference, and they can tie into a lot of different things. The guys can use them for not only their logging, the company uses it for fuel mileage taxes. We track all the miles in the different states that the trucks go through and have to pay taxes in different states that way. And the system creates a report for us every month, where we used to have to do it by hand. We had to pay somebody to do it. It saved us probably $50,000-$60,000 salary a year by having the onboard computers installed. So that was a big deal. The cameras also help with wrecks and litigation. The trucking industry pays a lot of money in court costs and lawyers for accidents. I'm sure people see the big signs for the truck accidents. Unfortunately, it's a part of the business. It's not very friendly for the trucks or the drivers, but the cameras have helped on both sides. The companies have decided they do use them. They use them in court if the driver is not in fault. That's one extra piece of evidence to help prevent the company from paying millions of dollars in court or to the person suing them. But it also saves them, even if the driver is at fault and the company knows that, okay, we're at fault, we're not going to fight it at court as much. They can settle outside of court and just move on with their business. A lot of technical advances on the equipment also, just the safety side, air monitoring systems on the tires. The tires are a big deal with the trucks. Everybody sees the blown tires on the roads. The biggest reason for blown tires is low air. The tires get hot and they'll explode. So we now have a few trailers that we're upgrading with monitoring systems and onboard air, which keeps the tires inflated at all times when the truck's in movement. And we also have indicators on the outside of the trucks to monitor that the air pressure is at the right pressure while the guys are going down the road. Lights, the LED lights, while much brighter and easier to see, they're not very hot. They don't make heat, so you guys will see that the lights are covered in snow where they used to melt, and that's something I think they're working on, create a little more heat to keep the snow off. So that's a big deal in wintertime, especially with us pulling big white trailers. They're hard to see in the winter. But as far as on the safety side, anti-lock brakes, disc brakes, which never was really a big thing with the semis, but we started putting disc brakes on the trucks, created an opportunity to save weight and also a little better maintenance issues, less maintenance issues with the disc brakes. So it's a few more advances that we've had. The biggest thing that we see, like when we're hiring someone, we're looking for somebody that's wanting to make a career out of this job. You can get in a rut of just looking for a job, but when we're looking for someone, we spend a lot of money getting somebody trained just to get you hired and okay to drive a truck here. We're probably 2 months in paying you a salary, and you haven't drove a truck at all. It's training, a lot of paperwork, a lot of computer training, on the job training in the plants, and riding along with the drivers making deliveries. So there's got to be a dedication to the job. Like I said, the driving is part of it, but with our business, there's a lot more than just the driving. We don't really make a habit out of hiring people that are brand new. We like to have people with a little bit of driving experience. So my advice would be to get yourself a job, or if you're in this area, you have the opportunity to work in the agricultural field and get some practice in a truck. There's plenty of farmers that need help, and you can always learn. That's really the best way to learn is on hand, hands-on, and then work your way up the ladder. We don't see a lot of younger people coming into the driving business, and that's a concern. The country is very short-handed on the drivers, so it's definitely something that we need people to look at, because there's very few things in the country that do not get delivered by truck. They may show up here on an overseas container, but once they hit the land, the driver's got to get them there, and all the products split up and delivered to the consumers. So we definitely need people looking at this as a career. There's a lot of different opportunities. The companies are realizing there's less people that want to spend their life over the road, and there's a lot more regional and local routes being open. So it's something that a guy can create a family life with. So it's definitely something to look into.